What if a necklace forgotten in a family jewelry box turned out to be worth more than a car, a house, or even a small fortune? And what if the most breathtaking pieces on Antiques Roadshow were hiding in plain sight for decades? Welcome to Antique Treasure BBC. Today we're counting down our picks for the most mesmerizing necklaces and jewelry treasures ever discovered on Antiques Roadshow. From forgotten family heirlooms and dazzling designer creations to pieces that hid far more value than anyone imagined, these remarkable finds prove that beauty and fortune often go hand in hand. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell for more incredible hidden treasure stories.
For insurance purposes, I would value this necklace at somewhere between £5,000 and £6,000 today.
What? You need to consider the fact that round your neck you're wearing £3,000 of necklace.
Okay. Kicking off today's countdown is a necklace with no diamonds, no rare gemstones, and no connection to royalty. In fact, its owner bought it for a very simple reason. It looked beautiful, it sparkled, and it made her happy every time she saw it.
I bought this about end of 1970. So when I saw this, I thought, I gotta have something bright and cheery.
And you bought it for the gling factor.
That's it.
The bling
the
factor.
feel-good factor.
At first, that doesn't sound like the beginning of a hidden treasure story, but on Antiques Roadshow, some of the most interesting discoveries start exactly that way. Within minutes, the expert realized this was far more than an ordinary piece of costume jewelry. The necklace was created by Miriam Haskell, one of the most celebrated names in 20th century American fashion jewelry, and a designer whose work remains highly sought after by collectors today.
It's a beautiful piece of Haskell and a beautiful piece of costume jewelry history.
What makes Miriam Haskell pieces so desirable isn't gold or diamonds, it's craftsmanship. Every rhinestone was individually attached by hand, and every detail was carefully finished with remarkable precision. Decades after it was made, the necklace still possesses the kind of beauty that immediately draws attention.
All of these little stones here, they're individually hand-wired on.
And then came the moment every Antiques Roadshow guest waits for the valuation. A necklace purchased simply because of its cheerful sparkle turned out to be worth far more than its owner had ever expected.
The A-line series are very collectible. This piece would sell for between $500 and $800.
That's great. That's nice.
It's not the biggest valuation in today's countdown, and it's nowhere near the eye-watering figures still to come. But it's a perfect reminder that sometimes a piece bought purely for enjoyment can end up becoming a surprisingly valuable treasure years later. And this is only the beginning of today's countdown. Next on our countdown is a heart-shaped necklace that was purchased in India about 15 years ago. During all that time, it was rarely worn. Not because it lacked beauty, but simply because its owner never really knew what she had.
My husband bought it for me about 15 years ago.
So a heart-shaped jewel, have you worn it?
No, I've worn it once since he bought it for me.
Once? Wow.
Yeah.
That answer immediately caught the expert's attention, and it didn't take long before the real story began to emerge. At the center of the necklace were several unusual stones. They reflected light like tiny mirrors and looked nothing like the brilliant cut diamonds most people are familiar with today. In fact, their appearance was so unexpected that it led directly to one of the most memorable moments of the appraisal.
What do you think these funny little mirror-like stones in the middle are?
Well, I didn't know.
But they are diamonds.
Yeah.
With that single revelation, everything changed. The mirror-like stones turned out to be traditionally cut Indian diamonds, and the more closely the necklace was examined, the more impressive it became. The front was decorated with diamonds, gold, and vibrant enamel work, but what fascinated the expert even more was the craftsmanship on the reverse side. Rather than treating the back as an afterthought, the maker had decorated it with the same level of care and detail, transforming the necklace from a beautiful piece of jewelry into a true work of art.
The back is often just as richly decorated as the front.
As the necklace was dated back to the 19th century and its craftsmanship continued to be confirmed, its significance became increasingly clear. A piece that had spent years sitting quietly in a box was suddenly being viewed in a completely different light.
So I'm going to say, I think £1,500 today.
Oh, fabulous. Thank you.
It's not the highest valuation in today's countdown, but for a necklace that had been worn only once in more than a decade, it was certainly a memorable surprise. One of the things that makes Antiques Roadshow so fascinating is that many owners arrive without really knowing what they have. And the next case is a perfect example. This woman brought in an antique necklace decorated with sparkling elements that she was certain were not gemstones. At first glance, it looked like a beautiful piece of vintage jewelry, but within seconds, the expert realized there was a much more interesting story behind it.
I don't think that it's sterling silver, and the sparkles are not really gems. I think they're cut into maybe marcasite or something.
The first thing he discovered was that the necklace was not originally created as a single design. Instead, it had been assembled from several antique pieces brought together over time. But the biggest surprise was hiding in those glittering details.
These are buttons.
Oh,
These are called cut steel, not marcasite.
What looked like decorative stones were actually cut steel buttons dating back to the mid-19th century. These pieces were once highly fashionable, but surviving examples have become increasingly difficult to find. Many were damaged, lost, or simply failed to survive the passage of time in good condition.
Even today, this is scarce stuff. I don't see it. One reason I don't see so much of it, if it gets wet, it starts to rust, and we can't clean that rust off. It's ruined.
That rarity is exactly what caught the expert's attention. And as the appraisal moved toward the valuation, the owner quickly learned that antique buttons can sometimes be worth far more than most people would ever imagine.
On a retail level, the buttons themselves can be worth $300 each. So in this piece here, you've got about $2,000 worth of cut steel pieces.
oh my goodness.
It was another classic Antiques Roadshow twist. No gold, no diamonds. Just a collection of repurposed 19th century buttons that turned out to carry a surprisingly impressive value and left their owner completely stunned. Narration: amber necklaces are certainly not uncommon on Antiques Roadshow, but the next piece caught the expert's attention almost immediately for a very different reason. Not because of its size, not because of its color, but because of what was trapped inside. The necklace was part of a collection that had belonged to the guest's grandmother. After World War II, she escaped Eastern Europe and managed to bring the collection with her. Decades later, those pieces were still being carefully preserved by the family, carrying both personal memories and a remarkable survival story.
Actually, this is my grandmother.
Yeah.
I was living in Lithuania before the whole World War II.
Right, and she managed to get out with it all.
That history alone would make the collection fascinating, but the real surprise was hidden inside the amber itself. In today's market, much of the amber available has been heated, pressed, reworked, or reconstructed into new forms. Truly natural amber that has survived untouched is becoming increasingly difficult to find, which is one reason collectors value it so highly. This necklace contained numerous examples of that original material, but there was something even more extraordinary. Many of the amber pieces contained ancient insects trapped inside millions of years ago when sticky tree resin flowed through prehistoric forests. Over time, that resin fossilized, preserving tiny fragments of life from a world long gone.
But the most interesting thing, I think, is this necklace.
It has
because,
the bugs in it.
yes,
And that's exactly what made this necklace stand out. For serious amber collectors, the appeal isn't simply the color or the craftsmanship. It's the chance to hold a genuine piece of natural history in your hands.
and I haven't counted how many of these pieces have bugs in, but
I think pretty well each one has one.
By this point, the expert was clearly impressed. Finding one well-preserved insect inclusion can be exciting. Finding a necklace filled with them is something else entirely. When the appraisal finally reached the valuation, the necklace proved that it was far more than an attractive family heirloom.
a necklace like this is pretty rare and valuable. So 2,000 British pounds or...
Oh,
Not tens of thousands of pounds, not diamonds, not gold, just a remarkable piece of natural history that could be worn around the neck. And that's exactly why this extraordinary amber necklace earned its place in today's countdown. From a necklace containing traces of the ancient world, we move to a collection connected to a very different world altogether, the British royal family. Some pieces of jewelry become valuable because of gold, diamonds, or precious gemstones. Others become valuable because of age. But sometimes, what makes a collection truly fascinating is the people who once owned it. And that's exactly what makes this collection so special.
And as far as I believe, my father-in-law's grandmother was nanny to Queen Alexandra and Edward VII's children, or Lord and Lady Knollys' children, and Lady Charlotte Knollys was lady-in-wait to Queen Alexandra.
Well, fantastic.
At first glance, the collection consists of medals, watches, brooches, and various royal mementos. Interesting items, certainly, but not necessarily extraordinary. Then the accompanying documents began to appear. And that's when the appraisal became far more intriguing. Among them were telegrams sent directly by members of the royal family.
Poor dear Baba and tiny Mama miss Nana very much. Hope she is well and not too sad. Signed, Princess of Wales.
This was no longer simply a collection of souvenirs. These documents revealed a genuine personal connection between a family nanny and some of the most important figures in Britain at the time. And then another telegram appeared.
The Queen wishes to let Nana know that she's expected here as usual for Christmas.
It's lovely.
Fantastic, isn't it? I mean, straight from the heart.
A Christmas invitation from the royal family. Just a few words, yet enough to transform these objects from keepsakes into historically significant artifacts. Even the expert was clearly captivated by the story unfolding in front of him.
Well, these were enormously important people that sent these telegrams.
As the valuation began, the figures steadily climbed. A medallion, a commemorative brooch, a watch, then additional royal pieces, each adding more value to the collection. By this point, the owner could hardly believe what she was hearing.
And then sealed in gold and original box, £1,500 maybe, £1,700, £50, I don't know. A watch, a gorgeous watch, actually plain, but sophisticated, well, maybe £2,000.
And that may be one of the most common lines ever heard on Antiques Roadshow. Because so many people arrive thinking they simply own a few old objects. Until history starts speaking. And in this case, that history carried the unmistakable signature of the British royal family. Amber has already appeared once in today's countdown. But while the previous necklace stood out because of its family history and fossil inclusions, this next piece takes the story to an entirely different level. The moment it arrived at the appraisal table, it immediately grabbed the expert's attention. Not simply because of its size, but because it looked like something that had emerged from the ancient world itself.
So you've come here wearing an absolutely massive necklace. You look like Boudica, Queen of the Iceni.
That comparison gives you some idea of the necklace's presence. It wasn't subtle, and it certainly wasn't easy to ignore. The piece came from a relative of the owner's husband, a passionate collector who spent many years acquiring beads, jewelry, and amber. Whenever the family helped her, she would often pass along a piece from her collection. Over time, a remarkable group of amber treasures found its way into the family's hands.
And I've inherited all this wonderful amber.
It's stunning, isn't it? And of course, the east coast of England is a great place to find amber.
But what truly excited the expert wasn't the color, the craftsmanship, or even the size of the necklace. It was what was trapped inside. Millions of years ago, sticky tree resin flowed through ancient forests. Tiny insects became trapped in it, and over immense stretches of time, the resin hardened into amber, preserving those creatures in astonishing detail. That is exactly why pieces like this attract not only collectors but scientists as well.
They are the most perfect fossil that we can encounter.
It's a funny line, but it's also completely true. You don't often see someone wearing fossils that predate nearly every civilization in human history. As the appraisal moved toward the valuation, another surprise emerged. Demand for high-quality amber has increased dramatically over the years, pushing values far beyond what many owners expect.
Decorative, they were worth £80 to £100. What was £80 to £100 is now £500 or £600, and I think your necklace is worth £1,000.
Oh, wow.
Not bad at all for droplets of tree resin that have survived for millions of years. And that's exactly what makes this one of the most remarkable amber necklaces in today's countdown. Next is one of the most emotional stories in today's countdown. Not because of a jaw-dropping valuation, but because of the way this necklace was passed down. Some pieces of jewelry are purchased. Some are won at auction. This one arrived as part of a family legacy, given to its owner as an 18th birthday gift.
So you're given this necklace not that long ago.
I actually started crying.
Did you? Why?
40 minutes on and off.
And it's not difficult to understand why. The necklace had belonged to a distant aunt many generations ago and had been handed down through the family before finally reaching its current owner. But the sentimental story was only part of the appeal. What truly excited the expert was the name printed on the box: Liberty. One of the most influential names in British jewelry and decorative arts during the arts and crafts and Art Nouveau periods.
Liberty are so important in the world of jewellery, particularly jewellery that was made, when this was made, which is around about the turn of the century.
This is actually made in about 1905. And like many outstanding discoveries on Antiques Roadshow, this necklace wasn't quite what it first appeared to be. The blue stones looked like turquoise. The pale stones looked like familiar gemstones. But appearances can be deceptive.
They're actually little blobs of blue glass. And then these graduated stones in the middle, and you may or may not know this, are called moonstones.
More than 120 years old, still accompanied by its original box, and preserved in almost impeccable condition. Those are exactly the qualities collectors hope to find in a piece like this. As the appraisal moved toward the valuation, the most memorable moment of the story finally arrived.
When you wear it for your ball with your dove grey dress, you need to consider the fact that round your neck you're wearing £3,000 of necklace.
That's the kind of information an 18-year-old is unlikely to forget. A family heirloom. A Liberty masterpiece more than a century old. And a value far greater than its owner ever imagined when she first received it. If there were an award for the best bargain purchase in today's countdown, this case would be one of the strongest contenders. Because the story didn't begin at a prestigious auction house, not Sotheby's, not Christie's, just a local auction where an antique piece sat largely unnoticed while buyers focused their attention elsewhere, at the time there was little reason to believe this necklace was anything extraordinary. It looked attractive, certainly, but not necessarily life-changing.
How much did you pay?
£120.
Just £120. That was the entire amount spent on the piece. For many people, that's the price of an interesting antique gamble. But as the expert began examining the necklace, it quickly became clear that this was no ordinary purchase. The piece turned out to be an elegant Edwardian Sautoir necklace dating from the early 20th century. Long necklaces like this became highly fashionable during the Edwardian era and were prized for their graceful movement and refined appearance. But the design alone wasn't what made this discovery special. The real surprise was hiding in the materials.
They're real pearls.
Oh.
Look at the diamonds, because that's what they are in these caps.
One by one, the important details were confirmed. Real pearls. Real diamonds. Original ruby tassels still intact. Every new discovery pushed the necklace further away from the category of decorative costume jewelry and closer to the world of serious antiques. Even better, the piece had survived in remarkably attractive condition. Taken together, the quality of the materials, the craftsmanship, and the period design made it a wonderful example of Edwardian jewelry. The kind of find collectors dream of making at a small local auction. By this point, the expert already knew that the owner had done exceptionally well. The only question remaining was how well.
You've managed to acquire a fairly important piece of jewellery for £120.
Yes.
Because I think that if one was selling this, it would probably make £3,000.
Oh my goodness me.
From £120 to roughly £3,000. Not a record-breaking valuation. Not one of the enormous six-figure surprises still to come. But it represents exactly the kind of hidden treasure story that has made Antiques Roadshow so popular for decades. A forgotten piece. A lucky purchase. And a reminder that sometimes the most overlooked lot in the auction room turns out to be the real prize. You don't often hear a hidden treasure story begin with someone trading away part of a piece of jewelry for a puppy. But that's exactly how the next necklace entered today's countdown. And honestly, that detail alone would make this appraisal memorable.
I swapped out part of it for a puppy.
Puppy?
I probably wasn't going to wear to a darling Jack Russell by the name of Max.
It's certainly one of the more unusual beginnings we've heard on Antiques Roadshow. But as entertaining as that story is, the necklace itself turned out to be even more fascinating. The moment the expert saw it, he became visibly excited. Not because of the amount of gold it contained and not because of the size of the gemstone. What caught his attention was the design. It immediately reminded him of the work of one of Britain's most influential jewelry designers of the 20th century, Andrew Grima, a man famous for breaking the traditional rules of jewelry design and creating pieces unlike anything else on the market.
Well, when you brought it up to me, I got very excited because it did look like a jeweler that was named Andrew Grima. He was a British jeweler making jewelry in London, and basically he liked to use all of these amazing crystals and geodes.
Grima never viewed jewelry as simple decoration. He viewed it as wearable sculpture. And this necklace perfectly demonstrates that philosophy. Rather than cutting and polishing a gemstone into a conventional shape, he took a natural amethyst geode and split it into two halves to resemble butterfly wings. The result is bold, artistic, and instantly recognizable.
And so he looked at jewelry as sculpture, and he split it in half to resemble the butterfly wings, embellished it with some tiny diamonds on the top and the bottom, and even made the little antenna right here en tremblant, so it trembles when you wear it.
Right.
For years, the necklace spent much of its time tucked away. But collecting trends change, and distinctive designer jewelry from the 1970s has become increasingly desirable. Pieces associated with major names such as Grima have attracted growing attention from collectors and auction buyers alike. By the time the appraisal reached the valuation, it was clear that this unusual butterfly-inspired design was worth far more than anyone might expect from a necklace once connected to a puppy trade.
Auction estimate would be between $3,000 and $5,000.
That's very nice to hear, and also about makes sense.
Not bad at all for a piece that was once exchanged, at least in part, for a Jack Russell named Max. And it's safe to say that few puppies have ever been connected to a necklace quite like this one. We've reached the upper half of today's countdown, and at this point the discoveries are becoming increasingly impressive. The next piece is one that seemed to captivate the expert almost from the moment he saw it. Not because of its size, not because of any royal connection, but because of the extraordinary quality of the stone at its center.
What an opal that is. It's perfect.
And that's not the sort of praise experts hand out lightly. This remarkable opal came from Australia and was given to its owner as an 18th birthday present. Like many young people receiving a beautiful piece of jewelry, she simply saw it as a treasured gift from her family. What she didn't realize was that she was holding an exceptional gemstone that would leave even a seasoned specialist struggling to hide his excitement. The longer he examined it, the more impressed he became.
I'm too afraid to wear it because it's just so beautiful.
For opal collectors, everything comes down to color. The finest stones seem almost alive, constantly changing as they catch the light. Blue, green, yellow, orange, red. A shifting display of color that appears and disappears with every movement. It's a quality that very few gemstones can match, and according to the expert, this particular opal possessed nearly everything a collector could hope to find.
It's a very, very vibrant stone indeed. It's a very unusual shape.
The stone was mounted in an arts and crafts design dating to around 1915. More than a century old. Beautifully preserved. And still capable of stopping people in their tracks? Taken together, the age, condition, craftsmanship, and quality of the opal elevated this piece far beyond the category of an ordinary family gift. Then came the valuation.
Would you rather I said £4,000 today?
Very calm. Yes, that would be very good.
Good. All right. Well, there we are then, I'm telling you. I think it's a really, really beautiful opal.
From a valuation of around £700 in the past to approximately £4,000 today, an impressive rise for a pendant that has already survived more than 110 years. And when an expert says a gemstone actually talks to him, you know, Before we reveal the top 10 most mesmerizing necklace treasures on today's countdown, there were simply too many incredible discoveries that we couldn't leave out. So before we continue, here are some extraordinary necklace finds that deserve a spotlight of their own. We're kicking off today's special showcase with one of the most memorable thrift store discoveries ever featured on Antiques Roadshow. Because honestly, if you spotted an old, colorful necklace sitting on a shelf in a thrift store for just a couple of dollars, very few people would imagine that it might be connected to late 19th century Tibetan culture. But that's exactly what happened here.
Thrift store for $2. That's great.
$2. Less than the price of many everyday purchases. No paperwork. No provenance. No prestigious jewelry house attached to it. Just a heavy, unusual-looking necklace covered in colorful beads and components that most shoppers would probably walk right past without a second glance. Yet from the moment the expert saw it, he knew this was not an ordinary souvenir piece.
Well, we think it's a 19th century, very late 19th century necklace. It is very, very beautiful.
And the closer they looked, the more fascinating the story became. This wasn't a necklace created all at once by a single jeweler. Instead, it was assembled from a variety of elements, some of which may actually be older than others. Like many traditional Tibetan pieces, it appears to have evolved over time as different components were added, reused, and passed down through generations. Even the centerpiece carried a surprise of its own.
And this centerpiece here is actually a woman's earring.
An earring, transformed into the focal point of an elaborate necklace. It's exactly the kind of detail that makes experts pause, because it reflects a long tradition of adapting and reusing treasured objects rather than discarding them. Pieces were modified, expanded, and reimagined, allowing them to remain part of family life for generations. And that's one reason authentic Tibetan necklaces like this have become increasingly difficult to find today.
It was probably a wedding necklace. We have pearls here, and we have coral beads, and then also this very, very bright blue turquoise that's used in the actual earring.
Most likely, this was once a wedding necklace, decorated with pearls, coral beads, and striking blue turquoise. It's easy to imagine how impressive it must have looked more than a century ago, worn during one of the most important celebrations in a person's life. But beauty alone wasn't what impressed the expert. The real surprise was its rarity.
And it's such a beautiful, striking, gorgeous necklace. It's very rare in that Tibetan pieces are seldom seen on the market today.
And that brought the appraisal to the moment everyone had been waiting for.
And we think that at auction will probably bring between $3,000 and $4,000.
Okay.
So good investment.
From a $2 thrift store purchase to a necklace worth as much as $4,000, not a bad return at all. And certainly not a bad way to begin today's special showcase of extraordinary necklace treasures. Our next case is a perfect reminder that not every hidden treasure is made of gold, platinum, or diamonds. Sometimes one of the most surprising appraisals begins with a piece of costume jewelry. This necklace had been sitting in the family for years and was believed to have belonged to the owner's grandmother, or possibly even her great-grandmother. According to the family story, they were never wealthy people, so no one ever imagined that this necklace might carry any significant value.
I believe it was my grandma's, maybe my great-grandma's. They were very poor, so they had to work with what they could find.
That doesn't exactly sound like the beginning of a valuable treasure story. But only seconds after seeing the necklace, the expert seemed to know exactly what he was looking at.
It's called a bib necklace. It's a fabulous necklace. It was made in the 1950s-60s by a company that we used to call Juliana.
This turned out to be a striking example of a Juliana bib necklace, a name that has become highly sought after among costume jewelry collectors. What's especially interesting is that most Juliana pieces were never permanently marked. There were no logos, no hallmarks, and no reliable identifying marks attached to the jewelry itself. For years, collectors weren't even completely certain who had produced many of these pieces.
On the jewelry itself, it's not marked in any way, but they use paper tags, and so the paper tags were lost.
And that's exactly why discoveries like this can be so surprising. What appears to be an ordinary family necklace can actually carry decades of mystery and collector interest. But what truly made this piece stand out wasn't just its history, it was its size.
Oh.
They have different sizes of this necklace. This is the gargantuan size.
Really?
In other words, this was the giant version, a spectacular explosion of color featuring layer upon layer of sparkling rhinestones. Green stones, pink aurora borealis stones, bright orange stones, every section seemed to catch the light differently.
And we also have green tourmaline rhinestones, we have pink aurora borealis rhinestones, we have orange rhinestones, you name it, we have it in this necklace.
It's not hard to understand why this necklace immediately became the center of attention during the appraisal, but the biggest surprise was still waiting.
These necklaces routinely sell for between $800 and $1,000.
Oh, go Grandma!
From a family costume necklace to a value approaching $1,000. And judging by that reaction, the owner probably wasn't the only person in the room who was surprised by that reveal. If the previous necklace proved that costume jewelry can hold surprising value, then our next item goes even further. In fact, it challenges almost everything most people think they know about fine jewelry. No diamonds, no rubies, no sapphires. And at first glance, it looks more like a piece of modern sculpture than something designed to be worn. But that's exactly what makes this story so fascinating.
And my father-in-law photographed some work for Claire Falkenstein, who's this artist, and took these pieces in trade for the work he did.
The family didn't buy these pieces. They didn't inherit them through generations either. Instead, they acquired them directly through an exchange with the artist herself. And that's where the name Claire Falkenstein enters the story.
Claire Falkenstein, amazing woman. This woman was born in Coos Bay, Oregon, but she wasn't known for her jewelry. She made gates.
What's particularly interesting is that Claire Falkenstein wasn't famous because of jewelry. She was far better known for large-scale sculptures, fountains, and major public art installations that appeared throughout the United States. So when the expert looked at these pieces, he wasn't simply looking at jewelry. He was looking at the work of an artist.
Modernist art, what it is, it's a pared down essence.
And that's exactly why so many people misjudge pieces like these when they first see them. No gemstones, very little precious metal, none of the flashy details normally associated with expensive jewelry. But in the art world, value isn't always determined by materials. Sometimes it's determined by influence, reputation, and artistic significance.
Even have a gemstone in it.
No gemstones, very little precious metal. I thank you so much for showing us another side of an artist.
And that brought the appraisal to its most surprising moment.
And he gave me a fairly nice auction value. He said between $3,000 and $5,000 for the two pieces.
Oh my goodness.
$3,000 to $5,000 for two pieces containing almost no gemstones and very little precious metal. A result that clearly surprised the owner, and a perfect reminder that sometimes the greatest value in a piece of jewelry isn't found in what it's made of. It's found in who created it. And in this case, that creator was not just a jewelry maker, but a recognized modernist artist with a serious place in American art history. That changes the way we look at the entire piece. What first appears simple, even rough, suddenly becomes a wearable piece of modern art. Some pieces of jewelry stand out because of their rarity. Others are remembered because of their value. But every once in a while, an item appears on Antiques Roadshow that stays with people because of the story behind it. And this is one of those cases. At first glance, this is a beautiful Art Deco pendant watch featuring platinum, diamonds, and elegant enamel details. It's the kind of piece collectors immediately notice, but within a few minutes the appraisal shifted from a discussion about jewelry to something much more personal.
I brought today a pendant watch that my father gave my mother after they were divorced.
It was a gift from the owner's father to her mother after their marriage had already ended. On the surface, that might not sound extraordinary, but according to the owner, there was a time when her parents could barely speak to one another. Years passed, life moved on. Gradually, things began to change. They started meeting for coffee, they traveled together, they spent time together again, and eventually became genuine friends.
Your dad's my best friend. Well, he gave it to her kind of as a way to say he was sorry.
That's probably a sentence the owner never expected to hear from her mother. And it's also the reason this pendant watch carried far more meaning than its material value alone.
When I look at this, I think It's all about forgiveness.
But even if you focus only on the object itself, it's still an impressive discovery. The watch was created during the Art Deco period, featuring a diamond-set chain, small sapphire accents, and a platinum case. Every detail reflects the elegance and craftsmanship associated with the era. Then the expert opened the watch and found a name that immediately caught the attention of serious collectors.
This one is Blancpain. Blancpain is a Swiss watchmaking company, founded in 1735. Blancpain is the oldest watchmaker in recorded history.
Blancpain is one of the oldest watchmakers in the world. Combined with its original 1920s Art Deco design, the pendant watch instantly became a highly desirable piece from a collector's perspective.
This dates from 1920 to 1925. It really is true Art Deco.
Every element pointed to a period when craftsmanship was still at the heart of luxury objects. And then the appraisal reached the moment everyone had been waiting for.
Retail on this, it would bring about $5,000 to $6,000.
Holy smokes.
$5,000 to $6,000 for a family pendant watch. But the most memorable part of this story probably isn't the valuation. It's the fact that a small piece of jewelry became a symbol of reconciliation, friendship, and a second chance after years of separation. And in many ways, that's what makes this piece truly priceless. If the previous pendant watch stood out because of its family story, then this next piece is impressive for a completely different reason. It brings together some of the biggest names in the luxury world: Tiffany & Co., Patek Philippe, Natural Pearls, Guilloche Enamel, Platinum, all combined into a single piece.
What I brought in is a pendant watch that was my husband's grandmother's.
For many years, the owner actually wore the chain separately as a necklace, while the watch itself spent most of its time tucked away in a box. But as soon as the appraisal began, the expert kept uncovering details that made the piece more and more remarkable.
It talks about the pearls being oriental.
And I don't know what that means.
Okay, that's an old term. What it means, though, is that they're natural pearls.
Natural pearls. That alone is a major plus. Most pearls found on the market today are cultured pearls, while natural pearls have become increasingly rare over time. As a result, collectors are always excited when they encounter them. But that was only the beginning.
Inside you have guilloche enamel, and this is all done on platinum.
With every new detail, the watch became more impressive. Natural pearls, guilloche enamel, platinum construction, the Tiffany name. And then the expert opened the back of the watch, and the story immediately moved to another level.
On top of that, when we open up the back of the watch, it gets even better. The watch was made for Tiffany by Patek Philippe & Company.
This was the moment that made the appraisal truly special. Tiffany is already a prestigious name. Patek Philippe is already one of the most respected watchmakers in the world. But Tiffany and Patek Philippe together create an entirely different level of collector appeal.
You know, a bunch of years back, this may have been $3,000 to $5,000, maybe $4,000 to $6,000.
What's particularly interesting is that years ago, this piece would likely have carried a much lower valuation. But the market has changed, collectors have changed, and demand for exceptional pieces like this has continued to grow.
This is easy $8,000 to $10,000.
Really?
And that's an auction price.
But by the time of this appraisal, the numbers looked very different. $8,000 to $10,000 for a piece that spent years sitting quietly in a box. And perhaps the most remarkable thing of all is that more than a century after it was made, it can still be worn exactly as it was originally intended. Some necklaces on this list stand out because of their value, some because of their history, and some are remembered simply because the story behind them is too good to ignore. This next case definitely falls into that category. It all began with a dinner party that the owner probably never forgot.
It was a peace offering from my husband after a very disastrous dinner party.
According to the owner, a guest invited by her husband refused to eat nearly everything that had been prepared for the evening. The atmosphere became so uncomfortable that she eventually had to order food from a local pub just to rescue the situation. In other words, it was not a successful dinner party. And her husband seemed to understand that very well, because not long afterward he arrived with a gift. An opal necklace.
No, I shouldn't think it was over the top because I don't think it was that big an apology.
Oh, really?
In the owner's opinion, it wasn't an especially extravagant apology. The expert, however, appeared to disagree. The moment he picked up the necklace, he was immediately impressed.
Well, I think it was a pretty handsome apology, actually.
This was a beautiful opal necklace created during the period when Australian opal mines were transforming the global gemstone market. And that's one of the reasons opals became such beloved stones among collectors and jewelry enthusiasts.
Before about 1850, opals came from Czechoslovakia, and they were horrible, dull little things. And in 1850, they started opening up the opal mines in Australia.
The flashes of red, blue, yellow, and orange that shift under changing light give opals a look unlike almost any other gemstone. It's the kind of beauty that needs very little explanation. One glance is often enough to understand why people have been fascinated by opals for generations.
It's a very, very pretty thing. It's, as you know, opals, beautiful opals.
And then, the appraisal reached its most important moment. The point where this peace offering suddenly became a much more expensive apology.
For insurance purposes, I would value this necklace at somewhere between £5,000 and £6,000 today.
What? I'm going to have to apologise to him.
£5,000 to £6,000 for an apology. Not exactly cheap, but probably quite effective. And what makes the story even better is that this was only one of several opal pieces featured in the collection that day, proving that sometimes a thoughtfully chosen gift can turn out to be a genuine hidden treasure. Some treasures are locked away in safes. Some sit behind glass in museums. And then there are treasures that were once treated like ordinary marbles by children. It sounds almost impossible, but that's exactly the story behind our next case. This jewelry collection has been passed down through generations of a family whose roots trace back to the Tennessee River, an area that became the center of a booming freshwater pearl industry during the late 19th century. Today, natural freshwater pearls are exceptionally rare. But more than a century ago, things were very different.
They treated them just like they were marbles.
According to the family, pearls were once so common that children played with them as if they were toys. They carried them in their pockets, tossed them around, lost them, and rarely thought twice about it. For modern collectors, that's almost painful to imagine. The problem is that most of those pearls disappeared over time. Some were lost, some were damaged, and many were reset into new pieces of jewelry. That's why surviving examples like these are so special today. And as the expert examined the collection more closely, it became clear that this wasn't just another family heirloom. That was the moment the appraisal took a dramatic turn. Because sometimes a single exceptional pearl can be worth more than an entire modern jewelry collection.
I'd buy a new Tennessee pearl for about $2.50, and they kept them in a cigar box.
$2.50. A number that sounds almost meaningless today. But its current value tells a very different story.
With the rosé,
Yes.
could be $2,000 today.
Wow.
$22,000. Not for the entire collection. Not for a complete necklace. For one pearl. A single pearl. And the owner's next reaction was probably exactly what most people would say in that situation.
I have a daughter and a granddaughter. They're going to stay right there.
A very reasonable decision. Because when something that was once treated like a child's marble becomes a treasure worth tens of thousands of dollars, you're probably going to keep it exactly where it is. And that's what makes this story so fascinating. It isn't just about the money. It's about how something once seen as ordinary can become almost impossible to replace. A pearl that children once tossed around suddenly becomes the kind of treasure collectors dream of finding. This next case sounds more like a fairy tale than a typical appraisal. A family tiara, elegant society balls, connections to British aristocracy, and ultimately a valuation that left everyone in the room astonished. From the very beginning, the owner described wearing this piece in a way that many people have probably imagined at least once in their lives.
You feel like a fairy princess.
And looking at the tiara, it's difficult to disagree. For generations, it has been passed down through the family and worn during some of life's most memorable occasions. Grand events, formal celebrations, the kinds of evenings people remember for the rest of their lives. But what caught the experts' attention wasn't simply its beauty or its sparkling stones. It was the story that came with it.
I cannot think of a better venue to see a tiara than at Balmoral Castle.
Absolutely. And it's been worn here.
Well, tell me about that.
Well, there's a Gillies Ball that's held here every year.
Balmoral. That name alone was enough to make the appraisal far more interesting. It's one of the places most closely associated with the British royal family and exactly the kind of provenance collectors hope to hear about. According to the owner, the tiara had appeared at events where wearing a tiara was almost expected as part of the social tradition.
The Queen always wears a tiara.
It was a world of grand ballrooms, evening gowns, and formal occasions that most people only ever experience through films, photographs, or history books. And this tiara had once been part of that world. As the expert examined it more closely, he quickly realized this was not ordinary fashion jewelry.
This is made of platinum, and you've got these delicate little intricate setting, which is called a mill grain setting.
Diamonds, platinum, classic design, exceptional condition. Every detail pointed toward a significant valuation. And then, the moment everyone had been waiting for finally arrived.
With the right auction, I would say this could be in excess of £60,000.
Really?
More than £60,000. A figure large enough to leave almost anyone speechless. But considering the story, the provenance, and the quality of the piece, perhaps the most remarkable thing isn't the valuation itself. It's the fact that a tiara that once made generations of women in the same family feel like princesses still has exactly that effect today. And in many ways, that's what gives a family heirloom its true magic. If the previous case took us into the world of grand estates and British aristocracy, then this next story transports us straight into Hollywood's golden age. A world where jewelry wasn't simply worn on red carpets. It appeared on movie screens and became part of cinematic history. From the beginning, the owner knew these pieces had a connection to Hollywood. What nobody realized was just how important that connection would turn out to be.
Tell me about this.
Well, this one was worn by Scarlett O'Hara.
Scarlett O'Hara. That name alone is enough to capture the attention of movie lovers around the world. She is the iconic character from Gone with the Wind, one of the most celebrated films ever made. And that means this necklace was once worn by one of the most famous characters in motion picture history.
Vivien Leigh in Gone with the Wind.
Vivien Leigh. A true Hollywood legend. But the story doesn't stop there, because this collection is also connected to one of the most important names in Hollywood jewelry history, Joseph of Hollywood.
Joseph was born 1905 in Chicago. He met a fellow named Walter Plunkett, and Plunkett...
For decades, Joseph of Hollywood was responsible for creating jewelry seen in countless classic films. Their designs appeared on some of the biggest stars and in productions from the largest studios in the industry. So this isn't simply costume jewelry. It's a piece of movie history. Hollywood provenance. A legendary actress. A legendary character. A legendary film. All coming together in a single collection. And then the appraisal reached its most important moment.
I'd say at a good, well-advertised auction, it would probably go $100,000 to $150,000.
$100,000 to $150,000 for costume jewelry created for the silver screen. It was the kind of valuation that reminds everyone that history, popular culture, and Hollywood nostalgia can sometimes create value every bit as powerful as diamonds and precious gems. But even a six-figure valuation wasn't enough to claim the top spot in today's bonus countdown. Because the final item isn't just another necklace. It's one of the most astonishing discoveries ever featured on Antiques Roadshow. And finally, we've arrived at the item that takes the top spot in today's special bonus countdown. If the previous treasures surprised you with royal connections, Hollywood history, or six-figure valuations, then this final case brings together almost everything Antiques Roadshow fans love. A stunning necklace, a legendary artist, a dramatic auction story, and a value increase that nobody saw coming. What's especially fascinating is that when this piece first appeared on Antiques Roadshow years ago, it immediately attracted attention. But nobody realized that its story was only beginning.
Am I dreaming? Am I still asleep? I was blown away.
That was the expert's very first reaction. Not after hearing a valuation. Not after researching the provenance. Simply after seeing the piece itself. Because sitting in front of him was a necklace designed by Louis Comfort Tiffany, one of the most important figures in the history of American decorative arts.
It was a very special moment. This is a Louis Comfort Tiffany piece.
For viewers unfamiliar with American art history, Louis Comfort Tiffany was much more than a jewelry designer. He was the creator behind world-famous stained glass masterpieces, the iconic Tiffany lamps, works that helped define an entire artistic era, and his jewelry has always been highly sought after by serious collectors.
This makes it a much more expensive piece. Black opal is considerably more rare.
Oh.
The green stones are Russian demantoid garnets. That is the most rare form of green garnet that exists.
The first time this necklace appeared on the show, it already received a very strong valuation. At the time, the expert believed it could bring between $8,000 and $10,000 at auction, a number impressive enough to surprise most owners. But then something nobody expected happened. The necklace actually went to auction. And as collectors began competing against one another, the bidding kept climbing.
It would be $8,000 to $10,000.
That was the original estimate, but the market had other plans.
The piece kept going up and up. Once it went above and beyond $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, it kept going.
And then the hammer finally came down. The moment that changed everything. The moment that completely transformed the story of this necklace.
The piece hammered, which means it sold, for $100,000.
Many times higher than the original estimate. The kind of result that surprises even experienced experts. But the story still wasn't over. As the years passed, the market for Louis Comfort Tiffany continued to grow. Competition among collectors became even stronger, and museum-quality examples became increasingly difficult to find.
It made me happy. Realistically, would that piece have a higher auction estimate today? Yes, most definitely. More likely in the $150,000 to $200,000 price range.
$150,000 to $200,000. A valuation large enough to make this one of the most valuable jewelry pieces featured in the entire video. But what makes this case special isn't only the money. That's an extraordinarily rare compliment. A compliment coming from someone who has spent years examining countless treasures. And it's exactly why the Louis Comfort Tiffany necklace deserves the #1 position in today's special bonus countdown. From $2 Tibetan necklaces and Hollywood jewelry worth six figures to rare pearls and artistic masterpieces collectors fought over, this bonus section could have been its own countdown. But none of these treasures made the official top 10, which means the items coming next are even more extraordinary. So now, let's return to the countdown and reveal the top 10 most mesmerizing necklace treasures on Antiques Roadshow. We've officially reached the top 10, and the next case begins in a way that will feel very familiar to longtime Antiques Roadshow viewers. An old box, a forgotten piece of jewelry, and a family that knew almost nothing about where it came from. After their mother passed away, the family began sorting through years of stored keepsakes and personal belongings. Among the various small boxes was a piece of jewelry that nobody could remember ever seeing before. It had spent years sitting quietly out of sight. No one knew its history, and no one was even certain it was genuine.
When our mother died, because my sister here, we went through sort of various little boxes and things of nothing in particular, and we each had a choice, and this was my choice. And I mean, I don't even know if it's real. We never saw it. My mother never wore it.
At that point, it sounded like the beginning of countless other family heirloom stories. But within moments, the expert knew he was looking at something far more interesting.
Yes, well, it certainly is real, actually. It's a most fascinating jewel.
The piece wasn't actually made during the 18th century. Instead, it belonged to the 19th century revival of 18th century French jewelry, a period when designers looked back to the elegance and craftsmanship of an earlier age for inspiration. Blue enamel, diamonds, rubies, an intricate gold framework, and hidden on the reverse was a small locket compartment designed to hold a photograph or even a lock of hair from someone dearly loved. This wasn't simply jewelry created to be worn. It was jewelry created to preserve memories.
Is inspired by 18th century France. But we can say with absolute confidence this isn't an 18th century jewel, it's an 18th century revival one. And blue enamel, diamonds, a little ruby in the front, and turn it over and there's a locket at the back.
But the surprises didn't end there. Accompanying the locket was a remarkable bee brooch created by La Cloche Frères, one of France's most prestigious jewelry houses and a direct competitor to Cartier during the golden age of French luxury jewelry.
It's absolutely there. They're a very distinguished firm running in competition with Cartier.
Set with Salon sapphires, diamonds, ruby eyes, and brought to life through an incredibly dynamic design, the brooch quickly became the star of the appraisal.
And everybody wants this thing, honestly they do, and value is to do with measured want. That's all that value is, and I'm going to tell you that in measured want that's £10,000.
God. The locket didn't reach quite that level, but even it delivered a valuation that left the family stunned.
Bigger, but quite enough at say £4,500–5,000.
Not bad at all for a piece that spent years forgotten inside a family box. And it's exactly the kind of discovery that has made Antiques Roadshow famous for uncovering hidden treasures in the most unexpected places. We've now reached the top 10, where the valuations become increasingly impressive and the discoveries become even more competitive. And the next case is a perfect reminder of something every serious collector understands. Sometimes a single name can change everything. At first glance, this appears to be a beautiful piece of Victorian jewelry. Elegant, delicate, beautifully crafted. But beauty alone isn't enough to earn a place this high in today's countdown. The real story was hidden in a tiny detail that most people would never notice.
Now the key about this is you've got a little cartouche-shaped maker's mark at the top there.
Yes.
That small maker's mark completely changed the direction of the appraisal. To most people, it might look insignificant. To a jewelry expert, it was the clue that unlocked the entire story. And in this case, it pointed directly to one of the most respected names in Victorian jewelry.
That maker's mark tells me that this is a piece of jewellery made by that very famous house who were working in the Victorian times called Giuliano. And you had...
It is them.
It is them. Did you have a suspicion that it might have been?
I've never ever had anybody look at it before, but I hope that it might be.
Well, I'm delighted to confirm that it is. It's not Carlo Giuliano the father, it's actually the sons, and they've got a slightly different mark there.
You can almost hear the excitement in the conversation, because Giuliano is not just another jewelry maker. The firm is regarded as one of the great names of the Victorian period, celebrated for richly colored enamel work, Renaissance-inspired designs, and exceptional craftsmanship. Their pieces are highly sought after by collectors around the world, and authentic examples rarely fail to attract attention when they appear on the market.
Yes. And it's colourful, it's delicate, it's wearable, and it's deeply commercial.
Oh, thank you.
And that combination is exactly what auction houses love to see. Beauty, history, reputation, and rarity. When all four come together in a single piece, values tend to rise quickly. By this stage, the valuation was almost a formality. The expert already knew he was looking at something special.
If this was being sold, the interest would be comprehensive, and I think it's probably going to be worth something in the region of £6,000 for this as well.
Yes.
That's the key name.
Yes.
Terrific. Thank you very much indeed.
A tiny maker's mark, a famous name, and a valuation of around $6,000. A perfect reminder that sometimes the most important detail on a piece of jewelry is also the smallest. From Giuliano, we move to an even bigger name. A name associated with Paris, with European royalty, and even with Napoleon Bonaparte himself. At first, the story begins in a surprisingly ordinary way. A simple blue leather box arrives at the appraisal table. But as Antiques Roadshow has proven time and time again, sometimes the most important detail isn't the jewelry itself. It's the name inside the lid.
The name in the lid is Chaumet. Do you know, have you heard of this firm Chaumet before?
Yes.
What do you know about Chaumet?
They're a really old company, and I believe they still are going.
They are?
I think I've seen adverts in Vogue as well.
Well, they are a really important company, and believe it or not, do you know who their best first customer was? Napoleon Bonaparte.
With that single revelation, the significance of the piece changed immediately. Chaumet is far more than a luxury jewelry brand. It is one of the most prestigious jewelry houses in French history, famous for serving royalty, aristocrats, and some of Europe's most influential families for generations. For collectors, the Chaumet name alone commands attention.
They made an awful lot of jewelry for royal families. They made tiaras. So any jewelry that is made by a firm of this stature is going to have a significance about it.
What makes this discovery especially interesting is that the necklace isn't centuries old. It dates from the 1960s. That may sound relatively modern compared to some of the pieces we've already seen today, but jewelry from the 1950s and 1960s has become increasingly desirable in recent years. And when a respected name like Chaumet is attached to the piece, demand rises even further.
It's actually signed Chaumet. It was made in Paris, and it's been brought into this country, and the hallmark is London, 1966.
Oh, right, okay.
Now, jewelry made in the 50s and 60s is very in at the moment.
There was another factor working in its favor. The jewelry set was not actually complete. Part of it was still in the possession of the owner's aunt, which meant the overall value could potentially be even higher if the pieces were reunited. By this stage, the appraisal was no longer simply about a beautiful necklace. It was about a highly collectible piece from one of the great names in jewelry history.
Factoring in all that I've said, being Chaumet and so very in at the moment, £6,000 to £8,000.
Really? Gosh.
And furthermore, you know your aunt's got the earrings. As a set, £8,000 to £10,000.
Thank you so much.
A beautiful necklace, a legendary jewelry house, and a valuation that could reach £10,000 if the complete set were brought together. That's more than enough to secure Chaumet a place among the leading discoveries in today's countdown. The deeper we move into today's countdown, the more the pieces begin to resemble museum treasures rather than ordinary jewelry, and the next discovery may be one of the best examples yet. At first glance, it's easy to understand why this piece remained treasured within the family for so many years. Its presence is impossible to ignore.
Well, I know that it was most probably acquired by my grandparents. My grandfather was a well-known goldsmith and silversmith in the early part of this century. I think that's older. He obviously simply acquired it, I imagine, because he fell in love with it.
And honestly, it's difficult to disagree. The piece immediately draws attention. Rich enamel work, green gold paradots, intricate decorative details, and a style that feels as though it belongs in a royal collection rather than a family jewelry box. This wasn't the kind of jewelry created to blend in. It was designed to stand out.
Well, I can quite see why you would. And, well, it's a stunning example of Victorian jewellery at its absolute best. And it's a type of jewellery that's often called Holbeinesque. There was a fashion throughout England in the 1860s to emulate the Elizabethan age.
The piece was created during a period when Victorian Britain became fascinated with Tudor and Renaissance history. Jewelry makers weren't simply producing fashionable accessories. They were attempting to recreate the grandeur and romance of earlier centuries through precious materials, vibrant colors, and extraordinary craftsmanship. The result was jewelry that felt historic even when it was brand new. And this piece captures that spirit perfectly.
And what a wonderful thing it is. It's in pristine condition. I think what's interesting to know about Howell and James is that it was a very famous firm. What date do you assume it was?
Well, I had been told it was about 1870, and again the term Holbeinesque was applied to it, but any more than that we knew nothing else. I don't know if it's even ever been worn. That may explain its pristine condition.
But beauty alone wasn't what impressed the expert. Condition played a major role as well. After roughly 150 years, the piece had survived in remarkably preserved condition, something collectors are always eager to find. The combination of age, craftsmanship, rarity, and preservation made it stand out immediately. And then came the valuation.
A specialist auction, one could expect to pay £8,000 for it, and if somebody was really greedy, perhaps $10,000 for such a dazzling example.
Gosh. Throughout the appraisal, one word kept coming up: dazzling. And after hearing a valuation that could reach £10,000, it's difficult to think of a more fitting description. A spectacular survivor from the Victorian era, and another unforgettable discovery in today's countdown. We're getting very close to the top 5, and at this position sits a name that hardly needs an introduction: Tiffany & Co., one of the most famous jewelry houses in the world. But what makes this story so interesting is that for many years the owner was told something completely different about her necklace. She was told it was worth little more than its gold scrap value.
I had it appraised about 20 years ago, and they told me it was only worth the scrap weight of gold.
If that appraisal had been correct, this piece would never have made it into today's countdown. The necklace was originally given as a wedding gift in 1872 and had remained in the same family for more than 150 years. That alone makes it an impressive survivor. But what truly caught the experts' attention wasn't just the necklace itself. It was the small box sitting beside it. A box that turned out to be a crucial part of this story.
And the box is also an important part of the story. And if we open up the box here, what we will see is that the inside of the box, it says Tiffany & Company, Union Square.
In the world of antiques, provenance can change everything. And this necklace is a perfect example. Without the box, it would simply be an attractive 19th century gold necklace. With the original Tiffany & Company Union Square box, it gains a documented connection to one of the most celebrated jewelry firms in history. Suddenly, it becomes much more than gold. It becomes Tiffany.
You always will need to keep it with the box, because if the box and the piece become separated, then nobody's going to know that the piece is actually Tiffany.
Right.
That's why the expert emphasized that the box was almost as important as the necklace itself. Together, they tell a story that neither could tell alone. And after years of wondering about its true worth, the owner was finally about to get an answer.
At auction, one would expect to gain anywhere between $3,000 and $4,000. For insurance purposes, it should probably be insured for about $9,000.
Oh, that much. Thank you.
Yes, far more than the scrap gold valuation she had heard years earlier. A Tiffany necklace, more than 150 years old. Its original box still intact, and an insurance value of around $9,000. More than enough to earn this remarkable family heirloom a place in today's top 6. We've finally reached the top 5, and from this point forward, the valuations begin to climb into truly impressive territory. What's fascinating about the next case, however, is that it revolves around a material most people would never associate with great wealth or luxury: glass. Yes, glass. This necklace had remained in the same family for generations. The owner's grandmother purchased it during a trip to New York around 1918. It was later passed down to her mother and eventually to the current owner. Throughout all those years, almost nobody knew exactly what it was.
Gone to some jewelers and, they say, oh, it's pretty, but we don't know anything.
And what do you think it is?
Honestly, I don't know.
Even the owner didn't have an answer. And when the appraisal began, it initially seemed as though her assumption was correct.
You know what? You're on the right track. It is a piece of glass.
At that moment, many people would assume the story was over. A piece of glass, not diamonds, not gemstones, not a rare, precious material. But that was only the first twist. Because in the world of artistic jewelry, the material is not always the most important part of the story. Sometimes the name behind the design matters far more.
And it says G. Fouquet. George Fouquet comes from a great French jewelry house.
And the name that appeared here was Georges Fouquet, one of the most celebrated figures in early 20th century French jewelry design. The Fouquet family helped shape both the Art Nouveau and Art Deco movements, embracing a philosophy that differed dramatically from many traditional jewelers of their era. For them, creativity often mattered more than expensive materials.
The material was not what's important, it was design.
The value was in the design, in the artistic vision, in the craftsmanship. And suddenly the owner realized she wasn't simply holding a necklace made of glass. She was holding a work connected to one of the great names in French decorative arts. Then came the valuation.
I'm going to say conservatively $10,000 to $15,000.
Oh my gracious.
Yeah. So what do you think? A nice piece of glass, huh?
Oh, it is a nice piece of glass.
A piece of glass, a legendary name, and a valuation of $10,000 to $15,000. Exactly the kind of surprise that has made Antiques Roadshow famous for uncovering hidden treasures in the most unexpected places. We've reached the top 4, and at this point in the countdown, we're no longer talking about simply beautiful jewelry. We're talking about collections capable of stopping even seasoned experts in their tracks. Not because of diamonds, not because of a famous luxury brand, but because of an extraordinary level of craftsmanship. This collection once belonged to a University of California professor who spent years living among native communities in the American Southwest. Over time, the pieces were passed down through the family before eventually reaching their current owner.
He became a member of their tribe and was on their council. Now, they came from him through several inheritances to me. I don't know if the Indians gave him the necklaces or if he bought them, but they did come from the Indians.
Spread out before the expert were antique Navajo squash blossom necklaces, along with other pieces dating from the late 19th and early 20th centuries. What immediately set them apart was the way they had been made. No modern machinery, no factory production. Just skill, patience, and countless hours of handwork.
Every single aspect of them are handmade. They were made with a cold chisel and a file.
For collectors of Native American art, details like that matter enormously. Age matters, authenticity matters, condition matters, and this collection seemed to have all three. Then came one of the strongest compliments heard anywhere in today's countdown.
I have never seen a more spectacular group of Navajo jewelry than this group that you've brought today.
Oh, thank you.
Not one of the best collections, not an exceptionally fine collection. The most spectacular group of Navajo jewelry the expert had ever encountered. That's the kind of statement viewers rarely hear on Antiques Roadshow. And it instantly elevated the importance of everything on the table.
Squash blossom necklace closest to me, I think would have a retail value of about $8,000. Oh. The squash blossom necklace nearest you in the neighborhood of $5,000 to $6,000. This is probably the most beautiful naja I have ever seen. It's simply off the charts. The same can be said about these bracelets. It's a spectacular sense of design and quality. These bracelets on a retail market value about $2,000 to $3,000 a piece.
Oh. Individually, the pieces were already impressive. Together, the collection comfortably exceeded $20,000 in value. But perhaps its greatest worth isn't measured in dollars at all. It's the survival of a remarkable piece of Navajo history, artistry, and craftsmanship preserved for more than a century. We've reached the top 3. And at this stage of the countdown, the stories are becoming just as remarkable as the valuations themselves. The next case begins with one of the most memorable family reactions we've heard all day. Because when this necklace first entered the family, the response wasn't excitement. It was concern.
My father wanted to buy it from the estate for $20,000, and his mom had said, "Don't buy it. You can't wear that anywhere. It's an invitation to murder."
It sounds dramatic, maybe even a little extreme. But once you see the necklace, it's not difficult to understand where that reaction came from. This is an extraordinary Art Deco masterpiece dating to around 1925. Elegant, luxurious, and remarkably versatile, it was designed so that it could be separated into 2 individual bracelets when desired. And that wasn't its only impressive feature. The diamonds alone were enough to command attention from across a room.
That central stone is 5.5 carats.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
The central diamond is certainly impressive, but it turns out to be only the beginning of the story. As the appraisal continued, the scale of the piece became increasingly clear.
All together, it's about 23 carats of diamonds.
23 carats of diamonds in total. This is exactly the kind of jewelry that defined the glamour of the Jazz Age. Lavish parties, grand ballrooms, and guests who wanted to be noticed the moment they arrived.
If you're here at a Gatsby-esque party, you
Which
know,
is perfect
for where we are.
We're ready.
You would see it from across the room.
And that's precisely what this necklace was created to do. Not simply to look beautiful, not simply to display wealth, but to make an unforgettable impression. Then came the valuation, the moment every owner hopes for.
Conservatively, I would give it an auction estimate of $60,000 to $90,000, and I would not be surprised by any means if it performed at the high end of that range.
Oh my goodness.
From a necklace once considered almost too dazzling to wear, this Art Deco treasure is now valued at between $60,000 and $90,000. And after seeing 23 carats of diamonds set in platinum, it's hard to say that warning from years ago was completely unjustified. We've reached the runner-up position, and the next collection contains almost everything jewelry collectors dream of finding in one place. Diamonds, natural pearls, sapphires, rock crystal, and above all, a provenance connected to New York high society during the early 20th century.
They lived in high society circles in New York, and I believe that's where my aunt acquired them. Later passed them on to my mother and eventually to me.
What we have here are a number of very interesting examples of what we consider Art Deco jewelry.
From the very beginning, this collection felt special. Each piece could easily stand on its own. A beautifully carved rock crystal necklace, a strand of natural pearls, a diamond-covered bracelet, a striking sapphire brooch. For many collectors, that alone would be an extraordinary collection. But as impressive as those pieces were, they turned out to be only the opening act, because the true star of the appraisal was a ring.
This stone fits under the category of diamonds that we refer to as Golconda.
To most people, it might simply look like a large and beautiful diamond. But to serious diamond collectors, the word Golconda carries an entirely different meaning. These legendary diamonds are celebrated for their exceptional purity, rarity, and beauty. They occupy a special place in the history of gem collecting and continue to attract enormous attention whenever they appear on the market.
You talk to a connoisseur of diamonds, and if you say you have a Golconda stone, this is the type of thing that makes them weak in the knees.
That's exactly the kind of comment every owner hopes to hear. And it's also a sign that an appraisal is entering a completely different league. When an expert says a diamond can make seasoned collectors weak in the knees, you know you're looking at something truly remarkable. Then came the valuation.
For the diamond, our valuation for that at auction would be between $70,000 and $90,000.
Wow.
The Golconda ring alone carried an auction estimate of $70,000 to $90,000. A stunning collection, a legendary name in the diamond world, and a well-deserved runner-up position in today's countdown. But what about you? Which piece impresses you more, the legendary Golconda diamond ring or the elegant Art Deco necklace that helped make this collection so unforgettable? And finally, we've arrived at number 1, the necklace that stands above every other piece in today's countdown, the most valuable, the most spectacular, and perhaps the most unforgettable jewelry treasure featured in this entire video. What's fascinating is that this story doesn't begin with a famous collector or a headline-making auction. It begins with a name that occupies a unique place in British history, Lady Astor.
The thing about Lady Astor was she was an extraordinary woman.
This remarkable necklace was presented to the city of Plymouth for successive Lady Mayoresses to wear on important civic occasions. From the very beginning, it was never just a piece of jewelry. It was part of a larger story, a symbol of status, tradition, and history passed from one generation to the next.
Everything, but rarely do I get presented with something that is quite so spectacular as this diamond necklace. It's not just a diamond necklace, it's like a diamond skipping rope. It's huge!
And once the necklace was laid out for examination, it became easy to understand the expert's excitement. Nearly 4 feet long, set with diamonds, sapphires, and platinum, and designed with extraordinary versatility.
It breaks down into no less than 6 separate components.
But precious materials alone don't explain why this piece reached the top of today's ranking. What truly separates it from almost everything else is its provenance, its documented ownership, its historical significance, and its direct connection to one of Britain's most famous women.
you have absolutely cast factual provenance for this piece. And if a piece of jewellery like this came up for auction, the international interest for it would be universal.
That's exactly the combination auction houses dream about. And then came the biggest valuation of the entire countdown.
I think it would sell for probably at least £300,000 to £400,000, at least. And I think, bearing in mind that provenance can make a huge difference, this has to be worth for insurance at least £500,000 to £600,000.
An auction value of £300,000 to £400,000, and an insurance valuation reaching as high as £600,000. A figure large enough to leave almost anyone speechless. Yet the experts still had one final observation.
It is well above the most expensive and important piece of jewellery that I've ever had to film on the Antiques Roadshow, and I'm a very lucky man to have seen it.
That statement alone explains why this necklace claims the #1 spot. From amber necklaces preserving ancient life to dazzling Art Deco masterpieces covered in diamonds, we've seen some incredible treasures today. But this necklace stands above them all. So, do you agree with our picks?